Hi everyone, David Aragona here with another edition of Horses to Watch. This week I've got four replays from last week at Belmont at the Big A to look at. And you might recall, if you follow my Naira analysis, I was actually off this past week, so didn't really handicap too many of these cards. But sometimes that's the best way to go back and watch these replays. Going into watching a replay with an unbiased opinion, you tend to pick up some trips that maybe you wouldn't catch in real time when you're just following the horse that you were interested in watching the race the first time around. But it is always worthwhile to go back and watch these races and try to clear your mind of those handicapping opinions that you had beforehand and any preconceived expectations of how the race was supposed to go to pick up who might have had a trip that you weren't initially looking for. Well, let's begin with the race from last Friday, June 28th. It's the third race of the day at Belmont at the Big A. This is a New York bred optional claiming 45,000 non-winners of two other than the allowance condition, going a mile on the turf for fillies and mares. Let's break these runners from the gate. We're going to focus on the number 3, Autumn Glory. And you can see coming right out of the starting gate, not an ideal start for this filly. She breaks about a length slowly, finds herself at the back of the pack early, and that situation gets even worse when you see what happens right here, because typically when a horse breaks slowly, the jockey tries to get the horse to settle and ease their way into the race, but there's no easing into the race for Autumn Glory. You can see that she is keyed up right after that, and she's actually blowing the turn here as she's fighting her rider's restraint, wanting to run right up to the lead, and it's just not the way that you want to start a race, especially a two-turn race where you want to conserve some of your energy for the stretch drive, and Autumn Glory is doing none of that. This was her second start off a layoff. She had come back off the layoff in a 6 furlong sprint race and admittedly hadn't really shown that much. It was sort of a disappointing effort. She was also making a trainer switch to trainer Pat Quick after previously being in the barn of Christophe Clement when she came off the layoff 2 back. So this was her second start in the Pat Quick barn, and just don't think we got a real gauge on where she's at based on the kind of trip that she got here. It's not like she's a horse that always has had this tendency to get so rank. This was a new development for her to react so badly to her rider's restraint this early in the race. And you could see coming around the far turn here, she's still in position to do something, running second into the stretch, but she's going to get very tired through the final couple of furlongs of this race, as you would expect with a horse who expended so much energy fighting the jockey and not focusing on reserving energy for the latter part of the race in the opening furlongs. So she fades to fourth in this race. Do want to give a shout out to the number 2, Snowy Evening, who does do some nice late running here, pick it up for second, actually, especially considering that this was a race that featured a pretty slow pace. And I think the slow pace might have also contributed to how rank Autumn Glory got in the opening stages. So I think she's a horse that you want to take a look at when she comes back for her next race at Saratoga, probably at this same level. Again, I think you want to find her in a race that has a little more pace so she can settle better and not get so rank. Maybe even a turn back to a sprint distance might benefit her in the future because she has been successful in one-turn races in the past. Let's move on to another race from that Friday, June 28th card. This was the 6th race of the day. It is a maiden special weight event going 6 furlongs on the outer turf course. 3-year-old and up fillies and mares is the condition for this one. And let's break them from the gate and focus on the number 1, Lamorna. She was one of the favorites in this race, breaking from the rail. You can see it's a fine start. She breaks with the pack. She's just a horse who doesn't naturally have that much early speed, so she's going to drop towards the tail end of the field. This was her first start coming back off a layoff. She had run well in all 3 races during her 2-year-old season and had really shown a potent late kick in her sprint races during that 2-year-old campaign. Coming back off the layoff here, though, I don't think she ever got to show what she can really do in the latter stages of a race because of the way this trip worked out. You can see she's towards the back here and just really has nowhere to go. The jockey's trying to wait on her, but also just getting mildly shuffled back as the field starts to bunch up coming around the far turn. She's ready and willing to do some running, but just is in traffic between and behind horses. And right here, you can see she bounces off a rival to the outside, back to the inside, just sort of gets pinballed around between horses, lose momentum, and lost momentum at a really critical juncture of the race when you want to be launching that late run. And you could see her jockey, Junior Alvarado, kind of realizes, well, that was my chance to do anything, and now I'm just not in a position to really be competitive or get anywhere close to the superfecta. So He's just going to ease this filly across the wire. She does do some decent running across the finish to start to pass some horses into the gallop out, but just based on the way the trip worked out and when she encountered that trouble at that critical point in the race, I just don't think we ever got to see Lamorna deliver a true effort in this return. So she's one that I would definitely look to give another chance to when she comes back at Saratoga, likely in a 5.5 furlong turf sprint, something that she's shown she can handle in the past when she made her debut as a 2-year-old last season. Let's move on to a race from Saturday. This is the June 29th card at Belmont at the Big A. The ninth race of the day is an optional claiming event, 80,000 with a conditioned allowance condition, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And we'll break these runners from the gate, focusing on the number 5, Sheriff Bianco. And you can see this horse breaks pretty well. He's with the field, getting hustled for a brief point of time, a brief moment by Eric Cancel to get forward. Just not quick enough to really go with the leaders in the early stages of this race, and he's just going to get gradually outrun moving down the backstretch, settles into this position here where he's right in the middle of the pack, but it's such a bunched pack that he really has nowhere to maneuver, and he's just going to get gradually shuffled back slightly moving into the far turn here. You can see Eric Cancel has quickly gone from shoving this horse forward to now taking a hold of him, and he's being, losing position as they move into the turn here, taking a hold of this horse, moving around the turn now into a clear last place, and just not the kind of trip that you want to be getting. And even at this point, I think you would want to see the horse at least swing outside, start to make some sort of run, but he still stays in between horses, continuing to race in traffic. And you could see coming to the top of the stretch here, this horse has run, but nowhere to go. And even right here, he's trying to move up between horses, but there's just nowhere to go. There's no hole opening up. So he has to angle back towards the inside. Now Eric is starting to ask him for some run, gives him one smack of the whip there. But again, he's got a leader in front of him that's tiring, and there's just never really a clear path available to Sheriff Bianco. Look, he was never going to win this race. The winner's Subrogate looks like a horse that's bound for graded stakes down the line, but could Sheriff Bianco have gotten a piece of this with a better trip? I think so. And at this point, I think Sheriff Bianco's form is a little dirtied up. He had tried going a 2-turn mile and an eighth in his prior start at Saratoga. That's just too far for him in this race. While he can get 6.5 furlongs, he needs to be more involved early in the race, and just getting pushed out the back door early was never going to work for a horse like this. So I think he's better than his recent form makes it look. And if he can find himself in a 7 furlong to a mile race next time out at Saratoga with an ability to get a little bit more forward, I think we could see Sheriff Bianco have a little more success. Let's finish things up with a race from Sunday at Aqueduct. This is the June 30th card. It is the ninth race of the day, a maiden claiming event. $75,000 is the claiming price, going a mile and a 16th on the turf course. We'll break these runners from the gate, and we'll focus on the number 9, Ask Isaac, and we'll focus as much as we can. You can see this video is a little grainy, and that's because it was raining during this race at Aqueduct, and I think you want to take note of that because it might have upset some of the horses. There were thunderstorms about to roll in, and you can see that the number 9, Ask Isaac, he's pretty upset, I think, by more than just the thunderstorm, because he is fighting his rider very significantly through the early stages of this race. And to some extent, that is just this horse. We saw him do the same thing in his debut race at Saratoga last summer, where as soon as they left the gate and as soon as the jockey dropped his hands, this horse wanted to go, and he got into a real fight with Junior Alvarado that day. Same thing happening once again here. And you can even see onto the backstretch, that is him right in the middle of the pack. He's throwing his head about, trying to move up outside of horses and just never settling. We're moving into the point where about a half mile into the race, and he still is in a fight with the jockey. And you're just not going to have success at the finish if you're expending this much energy fighting your rider's restraint in the early stages. Kind of a very similar thing to what we saw in that first replay that I showed with Autumn Glory. So Ask Isaac, predictably, he's going to advance a little bit further as Junior finally drops his hands and lets him have his head to move forward a little bit. But by about the midpoint on the far turn, you're going to see this horse is out of gas, and he is going to plummet towards the back of the pack. I think he ultimately checks in 10th in this race, so not a successful outing. But when you watch the entirety of the trip, you realize this horse ran a lot better than his finishing position is going to make it appear when he shows up in the past performances next time. So I think there is ability here with Ask Isaac, and I think dropping him into this high-priced maiden claiming race was a realistic move for him coming back off the layoff, given what he had done in 2 starts as a 2-year-old. What I wonder, though, is if Ask Isaac might have more success if the connections decide to go back to the dirt with him, because he's made 2 starts on the turf, but the one time they tried the dirt with him as a 2-year-old, he actually didn't get rank. It was a faster paced 7 furlong race, and he was able to relax in the middle of the pack. Actually, made a decent late run that day. He had no chance to be competitive. I think he finished fifth in that race, but it was a very fast Saratoga maiden race won by General Partner, and he was hardly disgraced splitting the field that day. I think at this slightly lower maiden claiming level, he's a horse that could have success switching back over to the dirt. He's got pedigree for it, and like I said, he didn't get so rank in that dirt race, so I'd be looking for him to maybe do better on another surface in the future, having gotten this outing out of the way already. Well, those are all the horses to watch for this week. If you want to follow any of these horses moving forward, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com. Just add them to your list under the account, and you'll get email notifications when these horses run back in the future. You can also go into your DRF formulator or Timeform USPPs and make notes about these horses' trip using the notes feature available in both of those past performance products. And those notes that you make will show up when these horses are entered back in their running lines within the past performances. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Horses to Watch this week. I'll be back with another batch of replays to analyze next week.